but I planted a few. You know, one of the most beautiful things we've got in nature are monarch butterflies. The yearly flight of the monarch butterflies, which is the longest long distance insect migration known on Earth. They start up in Canada and go all the way down into Mexico. And part of that goes right through our area, which is actually, pretty impressive to see, the thousands upon thousands of monarchs. So, in fact, some people say this is almost kind of like the monarch cradle in this area. But the problem is that the numbers of monarchs is down by nearly half in 2014 and could be even lower this year. And the main problem that's been causing that has been loss of habitat. And loss of habitat comes about in several different ways because, first off, not only has a lot of the wild areas been getting less and less available to them because of civilization, but then on top of that, one of their primary plants that they rely on is milkweed. And everybody's like, oh, a weed. Well, yeah, but it's not just a weed. It's every flower out there. I don't care if it's a rose, a petunia, a tulip, whatever they are. Every weed out there started off, every flower out there started off as a weed. And every weed has the opportunity to become a flower. And so I went out there and I was actually planting a few milkweeds up on a little slope I have in my backyard that I don't mow very often. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to have weeds on it, I want to have my weeds on it. And that way I can help the monarchs out a little bit. There are 5 different native varieties of milkweeds here in this area. And they include the aptly named butterfly weed, the whorled milkweed, the white milkweed, the aquatic milkweed, and the sandhill milkweed, which is kind of funny because we have the sandhill cranes here. But there are a few nurseries around the area that sell milkweeds, but you can also buy the seeds online. That's what I did. So it seems as though milkweed contains a substance that when they ingest it, it makes the developing caterpillar poisonous and distasteful to a lot of the birds and animals that try to eat them. So that's pretty good. And of course, once upon a time, this area had lots and lots of milkweed. So we had lots and lots of the butterflies, and not just the monarchs. You've got other butterflies out there too, but we're, primarily talking about the monarchs. But the problem is not only are there fewer and fewer areas growing milkweeds now, but we've got all of the pesticides and weed killers out there that are being used, not just by the farmers, but by, just well-meaning people in the city who just want to have a pretty garden. But, the garden would be even prettier if they left a few weeds there to attract the butterflies. So that's the most important thing that we can do is to make sure that the monarchs in both their spring and summer egg-laying seasons have a proper nursery habitat. That means that we need to plant milkweeds now. So, because it'll take them a while to grow up, and then it'll be time for them to show up. Well, we've got some other outdoor news. This is kind of an outdoor news day today. Tennessee Republicans Lamar Alexander and Bob Corker have introduced for the 4th time the Tennessee Wilderness Act. The Tennessee Wilderness Act of 2015 would safeguard nearly 20,000 acres of public land in the Cherokee National Forest area. 3 times before, this has been brought up, and everybody thought, everybody'd be for this, something maybe the Congress. Every once in a while, the Congress does actually get together, and it's usually something everybody can clap each other on the back and say, oh, we did good. Then they go back to messing with the country. Well, for whatever reason, they've never been able to really get this thing going really good. And over on the representative side, we haven't even had it introduced. We need Chuck Fleischmann to step up on that. I mean, this is a good bipartisan bill that ought to be something for everybody. I mean, you've got a diverse coalition of hunters, anglers, business owners, outdoor recreationalists, local lawmakers, and conservationists are all applauding this measure, and Eagle for a similar one in the House, and everybody wants it to pass. And I think this is a good thing because on the one hand, I don't think that the government needs to be coming in and telling people what they can do with their property, which is what the EPA pretty much does. The EPA is always wanting to tell you what you can do with your property. But at the same time, if the government can get property and it's paid for and it belongs to the government, it needs to be accessible and protected. It needs to be accessible to us, and it needs to be protected from different interests. Like you have the logging interests that sometimes they'll pay like $1 a tree to go in there and just clear cut whole big areas. And, that's just not right. They might plant new trees, which is nice, but it'd be nicer to have old growth forest available too. And that means that you've then got areas where you can go bird watching or bird hunting. You can go nature watching or nature hunting. There's always something good about the wilderness, and a good wilderness is going to lead to, good water areas, water runoff, which is good for the paddlers, the swimmers, rafters, and all of this brings money into our area. This is a very outdoorsy area, and it's being promoted as such. So if we're going to have an outdoor area, let's do it right. This area is going to include 4.5 miles of the Appalachian Trail and nearly 15 miles of the Benton-McCain Trail. And this is land that's already being used by the U.S. Forest Service. It just needs to be properly handled. And that's the important thing right there. There's no cost, no downside, and it would benefit not only the state and the nation, but us, and for generations to come. So I'm glad that Mr. Corker and Mr. Alexander are doing this. We just need other people like, Chuck Fleischmann to step up and throw his weight behind it too, so that this can get taken care of. Well, if you do manage to go out and go camping, something new's been kind of come up this year. One of the highlights of any camping trip is sitting around a campfire, maybe roasting a few marshmallows or a few little hot dogs or something like that. Well, campers headed to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, or, like Fall Creek Falls Park, or, some of these places like that, are being told to leave their logs at home and either get firewood at their destination or to buy specially heat-treated bundled wood. The problem is that we've been getting a lot of different insects and funguses that have been being spread throughout the area by people just bringing around firewood. You really don't think much about that, because, I've got a few logs in my backyard. Well, you pull the bark off of it, and there's all sorts of insects under there. Well, if you take that to the wrong area, those insects can really cause trouble. They've got insects like the Asian longhorned beetle and the walnut twig beetle, which, these have been helping to spread what's called thousand cankers disease, which kill trees. A lot of people have might remember this area used to be just covered in chestnut trees, but a disease was brought in from Asia, and now you can't find any chestnut trees. The chestnuts roasting on, they don't have chestnuts like that anymore, and they're working hard to bring them back, but it's going to be at least another generation before our kids can see a chestnut tree. So we need to, kind of be aware of what we need to do to help out in that respect, to help keep the areas clean. Jim Dale, a spokesman for the Tennessee Division of Forestry, said that humans are responsible for transporting most of the bugs and diseases from place to place, so it's up to us to keep them from spreading. So as of January, 30 counties in East Tennessee were put into a wood quarantine or a buffer zone. You know, and like I was saying, we've also got this little bug that's called the emerald ash borer. And that's been a real big problem, especially down in Georgia. They say that that is the Georgia's biggest concern is that particular emerald ash borer for killing trees in forests throughout Georgia. So they said that in Georgia and Alabama and in most of Tennessee, wood is available near most state parks. In fact, DeSoto Superintendent State Park Superintendent Ken Thomas said park officials understand that a campfire is an important part of the camping experience and that most people don't want to do any harm to their public forests. So just always remember, buy it where you burn it. Well, meanwhile, kind of going off on the other direction, TVA is reportedly looking for a way to raise its cut of every rafting ticket, and in the current deal being discussed between the federal group and Ocoee rafting businesses. Now, this isn't due to actually become into effect for several years yet, but the TVA is looking at asking up to $8.80 additional per ticket, and that's up from the current $1 that they're getting now. And that seems like quite a jump, but you have to think that first off, they've only been charging $1 per person for almost 35 years. You know, and the cost of everything else has gone up, including the cost to TVA. You know, because when water is diverted from producing electricity to carrying rafters, that costs all of us. And they're saying that, well, this is just, you know, the rafters paying their fair share, which of course they would then raise their prices to the rafters, which would result in higher ticket prices. Tickets right now for solo riders can range from the low of $30 in group availability to prices as much as $50 per person. And so while the $1 to $8.80 transition, which would be an increase of 780%, by the time you take inflation into account, the increase is still steep, but it's not as eye-popping as that initially seems. And something to also keep in mind is that fee increases that have been floated aren't official. You know, I mean, this is part of the negotiating part. You know, you start out at $1, they start out at $10, and you hopefully end up somewhere around $5. So, you know, this is still in the discussion phase. So, and this is a negotiation that is also, like I said, years down the road. If worst comes to worst and the TVA does implement the full charge, nothing will change until 2019, and things can change a lot by then. And I mean, you know, the thing to keep in mind is TVA has to balance its books just like the river outfitters do and just like we do. You know, we always want to complain about the federal government not living within its means. Well, this is a way that they can help live within their means. TVA is a business and it has an obligation to its customers, and that's part of it. So, but one thing to keep in mind is that one of the main reasons the Ocoee has received such high marks is because the river never slumps. There are next to no slow days or drought-forced slowdowns the way you have out in California. You know, and a lot of that has to do with TVA's water control. So, you know, if we want them to be able to continue doing that, they need to be compensated and pass that expense on to the customers if need be. We just need to keep in mind not to raise it so much that the people think that they might want to spend their dollars some other way. Anyway, going from there, let's see. Well, here's an interesting little item. The Confederate flag on license plates is being reviewed by the Supreme Court. That seems like a silly little thing for the Supreme Court to be worried about, but right now in Texas and in several other states, people can have personalized license plates that declare themselves to be animal friendly or blood donor, or they appreciate the arts, or they're all for schools, and just all sorts of different things. Most states have over 100 different specialty plates, including right here in Tennessee. I mean, it's always interesting. You'll be driving down the road and you see some strange plate and you look at it and it's a Tennessee plate you've never seen before. Even like the state's nurses now have their own license plate, which has a little lamp on it, which represents Florence Nightingale going around using her little oil lamp to take care of people. So, but anyway, but they have said that the state plates cannot show a Confederate flag. And the Texas Division of the Sons of the Confederate Veterans wanted to have a plate that depicted a Confederate battle flag framed by the words Sons of Confederate Veterans 1896 with a faint Confederate national flag appearing in the background. Well, they said, the state said, do we really want government officials at the DMV, no less, determining what speech is allowed and what is too offensive to be allowed? So the Texas Department of whoever it is. Oh, I got lost on my page. I'm sorry. The vehicles, yes. But they said that they wouldn't allow that. And so the people took them to court over this. Well, this is called the Walker versus Texas Division, Sons of the Confederate Liberty. Has consequences far beyond Texas, as most other states also offer message-bearing specialty license plates. Washington State and Missouri State have joined 9 other states in a brief urging the court to side with Texas's effort to regulate specialty license plates, saying things like, well, we don't need to have like a KKK plate. But at the same time, freedom of speech. They say that a license plate issued by the state amounts to government speech over which the government can reasonably exert control. And everybody else is saying, it's my car, it's my plate, I can say what I want. We'll be back in just a few minutes with more Cowboy Up with Tex.
Laura Ingram, Dennis Miller, David Toulis, Coast to Coast AM, and CBS Radio News. Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
Hot News Talk Radio, 910, 1190, and 1240 AM.
Pure, honest, fair, and respect. Just some words that come to mind when you think about how you want to be treated. And that's how you're treated at Rivermont Pure. Rivermont Pure in Rivermont, Chattanooga. Serving your vehicle needs for over 30 years.
Now that's a long time.
Owner-operators Charlie and Tommy always put your needs first. Yeah, go ahead. Get an estimate from one of those big guy impersonal car repair chains.
No way!
Then bring it to Tommy and Charlie at Rivermont Pure. Chances are they'll beat their price and get your vehicle back on the road faster than you can say,
our customers come first. Hi, this is Charlie.
And I'm Tommy, owners of Rivermont Pure. We're here to serve you.
Rivermont Pure, the auto repair guys. Featuring ethanol-free fuel. Located across from Rivermont Elementary on Hickson Pike. Rivermont, Chattanooga. Rivermont Pure.
Rivermont Pure, that's where I've always gone to get my car serviced. My husband and I trust Charlie and Tommy. They always treat us right and give us a fair price. And they get the job done right the first time. Thank you, Rivermont Pure.
Call 485-3375. That's 485-3375.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas, every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Hi, this is your computer speaking. I don't feel so well. It's like I've come down with a bug, and I'm getting slower.
Affordable Computers. We fix sick computers. Your hometown guys at Affordable Computers will repair your PC in half the time of the big boys at an affordable price. No tricks, no gimmicks, no computer speak technobabble. Just good, quick, and courteous affordable service and repairs. Want to affordably supercharge your PC? Affordable Computers on Highway 58. Affordable Computers hand builds all desktops in-house. If you're looking for a better-than-new refurb laptop, $150 will get you a Dell or another name brand at Affordable Computers. Affordable Computers, Highway 58, between Arby's and Taco Bell. Also Fort O, Battlefield Parkway near Holcomb's. Affordable Computers, we service what we sell. Call 499-1975. That's 499-1975.
Wow, this is amazing. I'm feeling great. Supercharged.
NASCAR, Laura Ingram, Dennis Miller, David Toulis, Coast to Coast AM, and CBS Radio News. Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
Hot News Talk Radio, 910, 1190, and 1240 AM.
You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local.
Come in. Anyway, we've still got a little bit of work going on here in the studio. He tries to hammer during commercials, but he didn't finish in time. I'm done. Anyway, welcome back to more Cowboy Up with Tex. You never know what you're going to hear on this thing, I tell you. Anyway, so I think he was doing that just to irritate me. Anyway, well, the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House were back in session in D.C. this week, and because of our calls and emails, several national right-to-carry bills have seen an increase in co-sponsorship. We need to make sure that this gets done because we want to send a message to President Obama and Michael Bloomberg that we want a national right-to-carry reciprocity. So we need to stay on top of this because, the thing of it is there's about a dozen different states that don't recognize other states' concealed carry laws, even for people just passing through the state. And recently, New Jersey has been in the news for several different instances where this has been a problem. They had one problem where an older man who was in his 70s was driving through New Jersey after having bought an antique firearm from the 1700s, and he got pulled over. And they didn't arrest him or anything. They pull over people up there just because they can. Yep. And so what ended up happening was do you have any firearms? Well, I've got this antique gun that was wrapped in a cloth that was in his glove compartment because he had just bought it. And so they end up confiscating the gun and arresting him on the same charges as if he had a machine gun. Now, this was a gun that had not been fired in literally 200 years. In fact, they said that the gun was so old that it is very possible, because of who owned it, that it might have been fired by George Washington. Well, a lawyer stepped in and is trying to help the guy with his case, because if he loses the case, he could go to jail. The thing of it is they don't even know if this gun works. In fact, when the lawyer was contacting them to try to find out where the gun even was, because it is a valuable antique, they said they hadn't completed ballistics testing on it yet. Newsflash for New Jersey. Guns in the 1700s did not have rifling, so there's no way you can get ballistics on it. But those people are just too obstinate to get in touch with the 21st century. Well, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get it so that people who have a license in one state, that license would be recognized in all states, so that it'd be like a driver's license. Can you imagine going to Delaware? You're on your way to New York and you're driving through Delaware, and they say, oh, you have a Tennessee license. You can't drive in Delaware. You'd have to drive around Delaware or whatever. Well, that's a similar type thing to having a concealed carry permit or whatever nowadays.
Hey, Tex.
I mean, never mind that the Constitution should be the only permit you need.
Tex.
Yes.
This is interesting because I lived in the fascist police state of New Jersey, and it truly is a police state. If you can picture Nazi Germany and the stormtroopers, that's exactly what the state of police, the state of New Jersey is like with the police.
Well, I mean, you look at their
have a billy club, they will arrest you. They did that to me. They will charge you. They make no bones about the idea that the state is in control, the police are in control, and that you will obey their commands.
Yeah.
It is the only state in the union that does not have a right to bear arms in the state constitution. It is a fascist, depraved state. The Commerce Clause of the Constitution dictates that if you have a license in Florida or in Tennessee or in Pennsylvania, that the state of New Jersey must recognize that. That was the purpose of the Commerce Clause.
Mhm.
When it says to regulate commerce, the regulation means the smooth flow
between the different states.
Right. It doesn't mean to hinder. It was to make sure that if you're married in the state of New Jersey, that Tennessee would recognize that one state cannot deny the rights of another. The fascist police state of New Jersey has been doing this for years. I attempted to take it to the Supreme Court in 1988, but I won at the lower level. And that's typically what they do. This guy will win at the lower level, so it never gets to the Supreme Court to say that the fascist police state is acting out of its authority.
Yeah. Well, anyway, fast forwarding to now, and incidentally, that was Confederate Mike, who was doing all the hammering in the background a while ago. But if you fast forward to now, the Senate Republican has introduced a reciprocity bill that would impose on every state a legal obligation to recognize the concealed carry permits of travelers hailing from any other state where they obtained their concealed carry permits. The so-called Constitutional Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act, or the CCCRA, according to Senator John Cornyn from Republican of Texas, the bill's sponsor, is intended specifically to eliminate some of the gotcha moments where people inadvertently cross state lines without realizing that what they're doing can automatically make them a potential criminal, like this poor guy did in New Jersey. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was not a criminal. In fact, he was a retired school teacher. But now, having been in New Jersey, he could be literally a felon for life and lose his retirement. Cornyn said this operates more or less like a driver's license. So if you have a driver's license in Texas, you can drive in New York or in Utah or any other place subject to the laws in those states. Cornyn had sponsored a similar bill in 2013, and it fell only 3 votes short of passing in the then Democrat-controlled Senate. So now that the Republicans are in control, you would think that it would pass. Of course, then it's still got to get by Mr. Obama. So, of course, hopefully it would pass by a big enough margin that it would be veto-proof. But there's actually 4 different bills that are being considered right now. The one by Senator Cornyn is Senate Bill 498. And this legislation would respect the rights of individuals who possess concealed carry permits from their home state and are not prohibited from carrying concealed in their home state, You have the House bill, House Resolution 923, which was introduced by a Marlin Stutzman, a Republican out of Indiana, that, is similarly worded. You also have House Resolution Bill 986, which was introduced by Representative Richard Hudson out of North Carolina, who's a Republican. Then you've got a third House bill, House Resolution 402, which was introduced by Rick Nugent, a Republican out of Florida. And these bills all have numerous co-sponsors. In fact, the one out of North Carolina has 114 co-sponsors. But the most important thing is we need to make sure that our senators and representatives are on board with this. I mean, this is our right as Americans, folks. And, they chip away at our rights a little at a time, just like they do in New Jersey. We don't need that anywhere else. So contact your U.S. senators and representatives, and you can do that at area code 202-224-3121. And that will get you Washington, D.C.'s capital operator. Just tell her what state you're in and what you're trying to contact, your congressperson or your representative, and she can figure out who to send you to. That number, again, is 202-224-3121. And just to remind y'all, the number here at this station is 800-8949. If y'all want to talk about this, you want to agree with me, you want to disagree with me, tell me about somebody's lost dog or whatever, just give us a call. We're always here. Well, somebody might say, well, why is it important that we have our gun, be able to take our gun with us when we're on the road? Well, folks, you never know what's going to happen on the road. You never know what's going to happen right here in your hometown. The Homeland Security Chair, who is Michael McCall, says ISIS terrorists are here in the United States, and he believes it would not be difficult for them to stage an attack. Ooh, that's why we've got a border, folks. That's what happens when the Democrats are in charge of the borders. Anybody and everybody can come through them, as we've seen. Well, according to Mr. McCall, he said, well, we have the foreign fighters. There's about 30,000 of them, 5,000 with Western passports, according to the DNI, the Clapper, whatever that is, and 180 have returned or gone to the region. And we have a number that I can't disclose publicly, but they are here in the United States. In fact, ISIS just over the weekend released a notice that had the names and addresses of 100 U.S. military personnel and was calling it a target list and calling on brothers residing in America to kill them. If the government can't protect you, you have to protect yourself. That's why the Constitution was written the way it was. Well, meanwhile, in an appearance on CBS's Face the Nation on Sunday, Bob Corker, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said that they are building a strong bipartisan consensus for legislation to require congressional review of any final nuclear agreement with Iran. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee will vote on the bill. And he said, we have, before anything is implemented, Congress should at least be able to analyze this deal, as is the norm, and say grace, up or down, as to whether or not we think these sanctions ought to be removed. He reiterated his hope that a strong agreement which stands the test of time and prevents Iran from developing a nuclear weapon can be reached. But he raised concerns about the willingness of the Obama administration to make too many concessions. You know, there's been a lot of people that have been concerned that Obama is really starting to get a little desperate about his legacy, and he sees this as one aspect of his legacy is making a deal with Iran. And that's kind of where he comes with this. He says, I don't know of anybody that doesn't want a negotiated agreement with Iran that is a good deal, one that will stand the test of time. I think the concern has been from day one that we keep moving from our initial position towards Iran's position. So there's concern that the administration cares more about making a deal versus the right deal. The Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act of 2015 was co-authored by Senator Corker and Robert Menendez. And Senator Corker went on to say this about the legislation. The bill is crafted in such a way to be judicious and to cause the Senate and House to appropriately weigh in on a very important issue. It's not crafted in any way as a gotcha bill. It is comforting to see the leadership of Corker and Menendez as they responsibly shepherd a bill through the process without a lot of teeth grinding. Neither Corker nor Menendez is known to be a partisan firebomber when it comes to foreign policy. Both men are serious, judicious, and conscious of their obligations to serve as the leaders of the U.S. Senate and in providing appropriate legislative branch counterbalance to the executive branch. And that's an important word, counterbalance. It's not all about the executive branch. It's not all just the president, no matter what the current president might want you to think. They've not demanded a passage of their bill immediately. Corker said he's planning to schedule a vote on the bill in the committee either Wednesday or Thursday, days after a self-imposed March 24th deadline for international negotiators to reach a framework agreement with Iran to roll back the nuclear program. However, the White House has reissued a veto threat on the Corker-Menendez bill, which is kind of funny because of all nations, the one that is standing up to the Iranians the most on this are the French. The French are very insistent that the bill be done the right way, and this is causing problems with the White House. Well, whether Corker and Menendez have the necessary votes to override a threatened veto is not of particular concern at the moment to Corker, who believes their legislation does have strong support. The fact that the White House is desperately lobbying to stop the Senate from voting next week underscores the concern that many in Congress have had about this administration's understanding or acknowledgement of the appropriate role of each branch of government. Everybody has their job and everybody needs to do their job. That's what's called cowboying up. Know your job and do your job. When you try to take over somebody else's job, it throws everything out of whack, and that's not getting the job done. And the American public should demand that this bill be heard and voted on. I mean, that's part of the Constitution. And the Constitution demands that this bill be heard and voted on. You know, it kind of makes you wonder, where's the UN in all of this? Why isn't the UN ever doing anything important? The UN never steps up. And did you know that the United States provides nearly 1/4 of the funds that the UN needs to operate? For the year 2015, that is $654 million that the United States has to pony up. And that doesn't include what's spent on them in New York. They cause so many problems because all these diplomats have diplomatic immunity. They cause wrecks. They've caused all sorts of other things. They drive crazy and just drive the police down there nuts because they have diplomatic immunity. Well, anyway, Lindsey Graham stated that he has enough votes, including some from Democrats, to defund the United Nations if the White House will not lift sanctions against Iran at the front end of an agreement, but leaves the sanctions in place to verify Iranian compliance. So he's tying the UN funding to the Iran deal. Well, White House Press Secretary John Earnest said that the sanctions could be lifted later as part of a negotiated deal, but that it would, Graham then came back and said that it would be a mistake for the ages if it bypassed Congress and allowed Iran to eventually possess nuclear weapons. Not only would such a mistake threaten our national security, but also the failure of the UN, which is supposed to be promoting peace, would be made manifest, thus showing why it would need to be defunded. Another way you can tell about this, when you think of countries guilty of human rights violation, who comes to mind? The Sudan, North Korea, Saudi Arabia, just about any country in the Middle East that's Arab, all of them treat their women horribly. I mean, in Saudi Arabia, women can't drive. They can barely participate in public life. They can't get jobs or travel without a male relative, and they are physically punished for clothing violations. They had one lady over there who was wearing one of those complete hijabs, which is the head-to-toe covering, but she had a little slit that she could look out of, and they ended up beating her because somebody saw her eyes and thought they were sexy. At the same time, you know, in some of the nations like Pakistan, if a woman is raped and they fight back, they can be killed for defending themselves. But if they give in, they can be killed for participating in sex. I mean, they've got the women coming and going over there. So who was named as the worst country in the world for women's rights? The absolute worst of the worst. Israel. Israel? Yeah. Well, there again, that shows you that the UN is a bad joke, and we don't need to have anything to do with them. You know, the problem is who is on this list. It's like a poster boy list of who should be condemned for women's rights, not passing judgment on others. The UN Human Rights Council is made up of countries like China. We know they kill their people left and right, and they've literally steamrolled over people who disagree with their policies. Cuba, who intimidates and punishes political dissenters by throwing them in jail forever. Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, enough said there, and even Venezuela, where the socialist leaders are letting people starve if they're in the wrong party. Well, the fact that there are so many American diplomatic corps people that take the UN seriously when this is an organization that is due serious condemnation. And you never hear the politicians say anything about the bad that they do. You know, the truth of the matter is that Israel, who's an ally of the United States, and of course, anything to do with the United States is immediately frowned upon by the majority of the United Nations, who constantly put us down while at the same time yelling and screaming for more of our money. But of course, Israel's not only an ally of the United States, but they're Jewish. Well, the vast majority of these countries that are condemning them are, of course, condemning them because they're Jewish, and they're some of the most anti-Semitic nations on this planet. So, of course, who is Barack Obama going to sidle up to? Is he going to sidle up to the Jewish people, the Jewish state, who has the only democratic country in the Middle East, who allows women to vote, allows women to drive, allows women to dress and lead their own lives the way they want to? Or is he going to side with the nations that are anti-Semitic, anti-American, and anti-woman? Well, we all know the answer to that one. We need to get out of the United Nations. This is a seriously corrupt organization, and it's a shame that the United States of America in any way sidles up to any of the nations to offer tantamount support for what they're saying and doing. We need to get away from them, and it's an absolute outrage that the United States of America gives any of them the time of day, much less our money. Make sure, and at the same time, Obama wants the United States basically to kowtow to the United Nations. What's wrong with this picture? These things don't raise a red flag to the people in office, much less the people on the left. If they can do it over there, folks, they can do it over here when they're in charge. That's why we all need to cowboy up for what's right. That's it for another day of Cowboy Up with Tex. We'll see you tomorrow.